Sometimes when I'm feeling a little down, a little disappointed that I haven't accomplished all of my dreams, I like to do a little thought exercise where I transport myself back to my youth when just the thought of finishing a novel felt impossible and amazing. I would read books like Little Women and think about Jo going to her attic and writing her novel by hand and this rush of inspiration. And I would think, I want to do that. I want to write a whole novel in a rush of inspiration. Will I ever be able to finish a whole novel? It felt so intimidating, so impossible. Now flash forward to adulthood, and I've been a professional author for almost 20 years. I've written over 50 books. And yet, whenever I finish a book, it still feels like, wow, I did it. Like, there's still a thrill. I haven't entirely lost that sense of amazement at the idea of actually finishing a project. One of the questions I get on this channel more than anything else are various questions pertaining to how the heck do you actually finish a novel? And they come in many different variants based on what this particular struggle of the asker is. So I thought I'm going to make a video where I just talk about all the reasons I can think of why you might not be finishing your novel and walk you through what the block might be and how to get past it. And some of these topics also come courtesy of my Discord server where people threw out some extra ideas for me to riff off of. Finishing novels did not come easily to me when I was younger, even though I was really trying. I was actively trying to finish a novel from the time that I was 9 years old at least. Really aggressively trying to finish a novel. I have so many unfinished novels throughout my whole teen years, and I just I couldn't figure it out. And then when I was 18, one of my friends kind of dared me. She kind of was like, hey, over the summer, what if we both write a trashy teen novel? It's not going to be good. We're just going to write a stupid, trashy teen novel. And I was like, yeah, okay, I can do that. I can write a stupid novel. And that was how I finished my first novel, by trying to write a trashy teen novel. It didn't really turn out trashy. It was actually kind of legit, but not great. But it was the first novel I actually finished, so it felt like an absolutely massive accomplishment. And from there, I was off and running. No, I'm kidding. I was not. I wrote that one, and then for the next 5 years, I didn't finish another thing. I was right back in the hole of confusion. I was working on this one book for years, and I just wrote myself into a hole that I couldn't get out of. And you know what finally broke me out of it the second time was I had this month where I was doing this text role play with one of my friends for years, and then she ended up being really busy, and she got involved with somebody and kind of ditched me. Fair enough, she's in college and has all these friends, and I'm just kind of a lonely girl working in retail, so I had a lot more free time than she did. But our characters, we'd been involved in this text role play for some years, and suddenly all my characters were tangled up with this role play, and then I was really sad because she wasn't around anymore. So I just kind of created a side story that had nothing to do with the role play. I created some new characters and just started writing for fun. It was purely for fun. It was basically a role play with myself, with no goal, no thought of finishing anything or trying to make it good at all. And in 1 month, I wrote 60,000 words about these characters. This was the very first version of what would eventually become The Potion Dealers. This was the story of Alfred and Livonia, but it was not good. It barely had a plot. It was basically they met and then he just kind of whisked her off on some travels around the world. It was just a pure stupid romance. But I'd written so much in that 1 month, and I was like, what if I put that kind of energy toward writing an actual novel? Maybe I could actually complete a second novel. It kind of snapped me into gear, and that was when I wrote Magic Under Glass. That eventually became my debut novel, but it still took me several years to really get Magic Under Glass like into a publishable shape. So that's like my background. It took me basically from age 9 to age 23 to figure out how to actually start consistently writing novels. So while I was quite young, it felt like forever because I had been working so hard toward it for like 14 years. And I think that I have been through quite a lot of the common struggles people have with why your novel is not getting done. So that's what we're going to talk about and hopefully encourage you to get to work. So the first reason I want to acknowledge before anything else is that a lot of people have health issues, issues with work-life balance, family that needs their attention, and those are probably the most common and the most difficult reasons to deal with because, you can't get rid of your health problems. You might just not have that much bandwidth to devote to writing. You can't just quit your job unless you get a financial windfall. You can't just ignore your kids to write a novel. These are all very real things. So I just want to acknowledge up front that, yes, these are common things. I don't want to make anyone feel like guilty or unaccomplished for not finishing a novel, because the one advantage I did have going for me is that I was young and I did still have the free time of youth at that point. I've generally been blessed with fairly good health. Definitely had some anxiety issues that have gotten in the way at times, but I'm not dealing with, a chronic illness, for example. The one thing that you might have a little bit of control over in this respect is trying to set up time boundaries. If you have not established time boundaries around your writing with the people in your life, it can be very difficult to suddenly establish them. But I will say that from a young age, I took my writing very seriously and I did establish time boundaries with both the people that I know. Like sometimes I don't get around to answering email or dealing with my social media messages, or I don't go out when someone invites me out because I'm on a deadline, or, my partner wants to talk to me and I'm like, I'm writing, and he knows if I say that, like, you must respect the I'm writing. So I've always kept that boundary around my writing, and I fully acknowledge that if you have not built your life around those time boundaries and like space boundaries with your writing, that it can be hard to get people in your life to understand without getting hurt or offended sometimes. But that is partly how you get things done. It might help if you try to figure out a way to start working them in, or maybe have a conversation with your partner and see if maybe they can give you a little extra time. And this also extends to some other obligations in life. Like, my house is often a disaster, like embarrassingly disaster. And it's not because I just love having a house that's a disaster. Like, when I was making really good money as an author, my house was always clean because I had the time to keep it clean. But most of my life, that has been very difficult because I've been working a lot on the actual creative part just to make it work. And something has to give. And for me, the cleaning is something that will give if need be. It can feel very embarrassing and inadequate, I think, especially if you're a woman, to have a messy home. But it's just like, it's a boundary that I have to establish. Like, my writing comes first, and if I don't get the writing done and the house doesn't get clean, that's just the way that it is. So I'm not saying that you need to do this, but I am saying that there are sacrifices that many writers will make to other parts of their life to make that kind of time. So time issues aside, we're getting into more practical reasons here. The emotional side of writing cannot be underestimated. It is one reason that, like, a lot of my channel's focus is more on the, like, emotions and the psychology of having a writing career rather than just giving you, like, practical tips. I feel like there's a lot of channels that have just practical tips on how to make characters more compelling and blah, blah, blah. But as I've been in this for a long time, I feel like the emotional burden of writing and how to manage it all and how to work through your mental blocks is in many ways more important than the actual writing skill, and is probably a bigger separator between people who succeed and people who don't. So the core thing I first want to mention is just that psychological aspect of writing that a lot of us writers share very similar fears and insecurities, and on the flip side, sometimes like a shield of ego that we put up around ourselves. I have felt all these things very potently in my life. When I was a kid, I often felt very egotistical about my writing. I was a kid who was very smart and whose whole identity was being a writer from a very young age. So I naturally just assumed that I was good at it, like it was a given. And for anyone to tell me that I wasn't doing a good job, that something needed to change, or that I wasn't ready, it really hurt me on a very personal level, because I had forged that as my identity. And I think this is a common feeling around a lot of writers who, especially if you were a writer since you were a kid or a teenager, you might have been that smart weirdo in your class who was always reading and writing, and it became this part of your identity. And getting to that point in adulthood where you realize that you actually aren't that good and you're not that ready yet. Like, you have maybe the raw talent, but you haven't really trained it and honed it to be publishable yet. Like, it's a real blow to you emotionally, and it can take a while to get over not taking that personally. And on the flip side, you may feel these things very much at the same time, is a level of deep insecurity that you maybe just are not as good as maybe some of your friends. You're not as good as the people that you looked up to your whole life. Like, you may start to realize as you get older, like, I'm the same age as X author I've admired since I was a kid, and I just am not as good as them. Some of you might have had somebody dumping on you your whole life. You might have a very unsupportive family member, or someone who's always kind of made fun of your ambitions as a writer, or maybe you had a bad experience at some point where somebody really kind of trashed your writing. There are so many different places that those kinds of insecurities can come from, but I think they're fairly universal feelings among writers, that we have moments where we just feel like, I suck. I just suck. I still have those moments sometimes where I feel like I've hit a wall and my talents are just not up to my dreams. And that feeling, it still hurts sometimes to just feel like, at this point, I'm not sure that I'm ever going to be this good. And it's something that I just have to try not to cling to very much. I just have to let go of it and accept that I'm good enough. I'm good enough that someone is going to like my writing, and some people aren't, and that's okay. Not everyone appeals to everyone. Some people are going to think my work is amazing, and some people are going to think it's good, and some people are going to hate it. And I have to separate my work from its reception. I just have to try to become better for the sake of myself and not worry too much about what the public, how they react to it. And it is a lifelong struggle. But I want you all to know how incredibly universal this feeling is, and how important I think that it is to get past it, because every person has something unique to bring to the world, and some of us are going to connect with more people than others. But that doesn't mean that the work that you're bringing into the world doesn't have value. I know how difficult it is to get past those feelings, but when you're actually doing the work, please just try to remember you are so not alone in those feelings, and just try to put them out of your head while you're creating. One of the things that helped me with this is when I started getting serious about publication, I just kind of shifted my attitude toward accepting the idea that my writing was bad. For a long time, I'd been clinging really hard to the idea that my writing was really good and that I was a genius and that I had these great ideas. And at some point, I just kind of released that feeling to a certain extent and just went, I am an amateur and I have so much to learn, and this stuff I'm writing is just kind of bad. And that was very freeing in a way, because suddenly I felt very open to just trying things, just taking a lot of feedback and just trying to not take it personally, just to come at it with the attitude of I know this is bad. Just tell me what's not working, and I'll get in there and I'll figure it out. That was the real turning point for me from becoming like a child into an adult, a amateur into a professional, is just accepting I'm not that good at this. I'm just going to take all the feedback. I'm just going to read the writing craft books. I'm going to embrace it all as if I have never written a word in my life and really try to level up now. That information might be a little more pertinent if you've been writing a very long time and you've gotten a lot of praise for it and it's like your thing, versus if you're kind of new to it. Like when I'm playing a musical instrument, like I know I'm gonna suck, so I'm just totally fine with critique of that because it's not my thing. I'm just messing around. But with writing, like there was a certain part of me that expected to be fantastic and genius at it, and I just had to completely let that idea go before I was able to really become a professional. And on a similar note, there's also imposter syndrome, the feeling that somebody else is always better, and in that way too, it's true. Somebody else is always better, but there's room for a heck of a lot of people in creative fields. And you don't really want, like when you're reading, you don't want every book you read to be the same. Like you probably have your favorite author, but even if you had 20 authors that all wrote exactly like your favorite author, would you really want that? I wouldn't. It would start to become very repetitive. So even if you feel like someone else is better, try your best to remember that what you bring to the table is your own thing and there's room for lots of different things. And I've also just tried to accept over the years, because I've been in this business a while and I've seen friends do much better than me at times. I have friends that are not doing as well as me and friends that are doing much better than me. And I've just kind of had to learn over time to just accept I'm where I'm at. I can only control myself. And what I write is very much my writing. It's not what anybody else does. Their readers are not my readers in some cases. And it's not an easy lesson to learn, but if you manage to hang in there, it is a lesson that you will learn over time, because there's a lot of us out there. We all have unique things to bring to the table. And it's okay not to be the best. Your work still is valid. You still have something important to say, even if you are very much mid-tier in the great scheme of things. And of course, it's always possible that my best work or the recognition for my work is yet to come, but in a lot of ways, I've just kind of let go of even thinking about that. It's just so much better for my sanity to not even try to be the best or to get a certain kind of acclaim. And whenever I have had my moments of great acclaim, I have just learned from experience that you just want the next thing. You just compare yourself to the next level up. It doesn't change things at all to achieve something huge, because as soon as you have gone through the dopamine hit of that success, you just go to wanting the next one. So it's good to just settle into just be the best you can be and don't worry about anybody else. Okay, so that's like your initial emotional block. Now we're sitting down, we're doing the actual work. And one of the next big problems a lot of authors have is that they don't really have a plan. And this was definitely me for many years, and why I struggled to finish books. I didn't write outlines, and some successful authors don't write outlines. Even now, you might find that your process does not lean toward writing an outline. But whatever your process is, I think even most people who just wing it as they go often have learned that you kind of need a little bit of a plan, especially if you're a beginner and you're just learning about story structure. A lot of my earliest novels involved coming up with a cool idea and some characters that I really wanted to write about. And they all had really interesting backstories. And then I'd bring them together and, they'd have like some fun dynamics. These two were making friends and these two were starting to fall in love. And they'd tell each other about their tragic pasts. And they would all like establish like the problems that they needed to work out. And then I would stop writing because, okay, now what? Like I didn't know how to see through the next part. And generally I would have created a tangled mess for myself just in the establishing of these characters, because they'd all come with like some kind of convoluted backstory where they all had these things they need to resolve, and in no way would I have considered how these different backstories were actually going to play out and like work together. And there often would not be a very coherent goal for the whole party to get to. It was like all I had were their problems, but not the solutions. And some people are able to figure that out just as they go. But, you know, I have a strong theory that George R. R. Martin wrote Game of Thrones with this kind of mindset, that he just kind of like introduced a lot of cool characters and cool problems and saw it through a whole lot of stuff, and whenever he would get a little stuck, he would introduce more points of view and more characters, which was also something I would totally do. If I was stuck, I would just bring in new characters into the party, and I just would not know, like, how am I going to wrap all this up? And, you know, I don't know, but whenever I read Game of Thrones, I get serious child me vibes. Obviously, George R. R. Martin is a much better writer and took it much farther than I was able to do so, but I still kind of get this feeling like, does he even know how to finish this thing? I know there's different theories out there about why he hasn't finished Game of Thrones, but just based on my own experience, I'm getting a feeling that feels familiar when I read Game of Thrones. So basically, I did not get anywhere until I studied plot structure and I wrote an outline. And I did not always stick to the outline, and the outline was often kind of vague. I'm still usually not like if you are somebody who likes to kind of feel that discovery as you go, but you're just not finishing anything, I would really suggest just trying to make an outline, but like you can keep it very bare bones. You just need a destination in mind. And you need to sit there and really think, why are all these characters there? And where are they all going to go? And why? What are they going to learn? What is the change that they're going to go through? And I just was not really able to finish anything until I started focusing on that broader structure. I think I resisted it for a long time because I was such a character writer and I felt like I had to let the character show me the way. But now I realize that still happens because I often veer off my outline or I have to rewrite the outline multiple times. I still let the character steer the way. But if I at least have like a potential plan when I start, it helps a lot in getting me to finish things. Another problem that I would have that I think is common is that, like, okay, I do have some plot in mind, but it has veered wildly off course, or it's gotten away from me in some fashion. It's gotten too complicated. It went in a direction that I didn't expect and it felt right at the time, but now I'm stuck. Or I followed the outline, but it just feels like it's not working and I'm stuck. This is something that still happens to me, and I want to let every author who is a beginner know that you can learn the skill of getting yourself unstuck, but it is a skill. It is not a thing that just magically happens. Like when I was writing my new novel, Wanted, Brooding Man, Tragic Past, if you followed my videos about writing this book, I thought this was going to be a quick little book that I was going to get done in a few months because it was just like a cute little cozy romance, very simple. But it ended up taking me like 2 years or something because I just kept hitting walls with it where I was just like, something about this is not working. And I have this plot and on paper it all sounds fine, but it is just not working. So like this still happens to me. So if you want to actually complete novels, you have to learn the skill of getting past the stuck points. And there are a number of techniques that I have learned to get past the stuck points. I could probably make a whole video about getting past stuck points, or maybe I already have because I can't even remember sometimes. But some of them are, find somebody who will listen to you talk about your problem. Sometimes just saying it aloud to someone, they don't even have to say anything half the time. I'll just kind of talk it out and then I'll go, oh, wait a minute. Okay, never mind. I got it. Like I'll tell Dade about it and he'll start to tell me like a suggestion of what he thinks I could do. And I'll be like, no, be quiet. I have it. Never mind. So, you know, he's a good person for me to talk to because if I don't get it, he often will have a good idea. But sometimes he'll start to have a good idea and I'm like cutting him off at the pass. Like, no, never mind. I got it now. So if you can find someone to talk to, just talk it out, keep talking it out. You can journal it out if you can't talk it out, but I do think talking is better. Sometimes you got something in there that's just boring and you think that you need it, but you don't. If you have a scene in there that you don't want to write, don't write it. Just don't. Sit down and think about it, and I promise you 90% of the time you will think of a way to not write the scene if you go into it thinking, how can I not write this? Or on the flip side, sit down and think about, what do I love to write and how can I make the next scene involve this thing that I love to write? You've got to learn that when you get stuck, you have to come up with a reason to make yourself want to write the scene. Some people think like you just gotta slog through it. And occasionally I do have scenes that I just need to slog through. But in a lot of cases, it's actually that I need to change the scene so that I'm more interested in it. And just thinking that through will often make the entire book better. I am of the opinion that writing should not be miserable. It should be fun. So if I'm working on something and it's starting to feel miserable, why? And what could I do that would make me want to write it? What could I change that would make me excited to write it again? And especially when you're kind of new, this can sometimes involve a lot of rewriting. It's very normal to do a lot of rewriting. Sometimes I still did a lot of rewriting on my recent book because every time I would kind of have to work through the tangle of what wasn't working, I would realize I had to go back and rewrite something earlier on. But you can get caught in an endless rewrite as well. You can get stuck in what I call developmental hell. You don't want that either. You want to keep proceeding. So this is where there's no real easy answer to how to get out of it. But I think the primary thing to bear in mind is that it is a skill that you will learn to develop if you are determined to learn it. So try different things and try to work on what isn't working until it is working. Try to work past it. Don't just give up and write something else every time. Now, sometimes it is a good idea to quit on a book and like step away, work on something else. But if you consistently do that with everything and you never come back to anything and actually finish it, like you need to sit down and learn how to work through those moments, how to make them feel exciting to you and like easy as well. Like sometimes I'll write in scenes that are just feel really hard to write and not in a satisfying way, just like in a terrible, this is just difficult and not fun at all. So just sit down and try to think like, how can I make writing as fun and easy and delicious as possible? What can I do to make every scene just Another common reason not to finish a book is that the project feels just intimidating or needs a lot of research or it's very long or very tangled. That was something that I also dealt with a lot because I really loved reading epic fantasy and epic historical novels, books that were like 800 pages long and had 5 points of view and dealt with historical periods and places. And since that was what I was reading, I'd be like 12 years old and trying to write a book like this. It just wasn't going to happen. I was nowhere near ready to write something like that. Probably now in my 40s, I'm finally starting to feel like I'm starting to write longer, more complex books with multiple points of view that span trilogies and have complex plots. If that's really all you want to write, let's just acknowledge that you were trying something very difficult, but I would really, if at all possible, recommend that you try to scale down. Write some projects that are simpler first. I fully understand that the impetus for wanting to write the epic fantasy or the sweeping sci-fi space opera or whatever, but most people don't have the skill for that to be their first novel. So if there's anything else that you possibly could see yourself writing that's on a little bit of a smaller scale and has a little less pressure, try that. And when it comes to any kind of writing, I cannot overstate how every writer I've ever known, I've ever been friends with, they all have a very different process. Anybody who tells you this is the way to do something, this is what works, they are selling you some BS because there is no one way. There are authors that break every rule of productivity, of how they approach their writing projects, just whatever rules you think exist. somebody's breaking them. Whatever productivity plan you think will work, somebody is doing the exact opposite. You really need to find your own process and know that there is no one magic bullet to getting a novel done. And it is very normal to play around with a lot of different things. If you've always been a plotter, try being a pantser. If you've always been a pantser, try being a plotter. Try writing stuff by hand. Try writing something totally different. Try writing for 10 minutes a day. Try writing for 2 hours a night. Try writing with a friend. Try writing only on weekends. Try writing only on weekdays. Try writing while you're standing up. Try dictating while you're taking a walk. Try writing a novel in verse. Try everything. Try everything if you're not getting it done, because you just never know what is going to be the thing that's like, oh, this is what works. This works for me. And it can also change with every book. I've said before that I have different processes for every book. They just come out in different ways. Like every book is unique, and the way that the book comes into the world is also unique. Another common problem, which is kind of similar to what I was talking about, but just is not having enough interest to see a project through. And similarly, I would say either you can try to write something less ambitious, something shorter and easier to finish, or, I think that we all need to sit down at some point and really acknowledge why we do this. Why do you write? And why are you not finishing books? What do you want to actually say, and why do you keep getting bored with a book halfway through? I think that when I was younger and I didn't finish a lot of projects, often I would just kind of come up with a cool idea and I would just throw it out there without really knowing why I was writing. Writing was more of a compulsion half the time. It was very therapeutic to me. I would play characters with my sister, and that was where a lot of my stories came from. But the pretend games we would play meant a lot more to me than what I could get on the page. So I had these deep themes and this kind of therapeutic reason for connecting with these characters. But when I wrote, I often didn't really think about why this meant something to me and why I was doing it. And I think that was another reason that I had a hard time finishing, and why I started to do better when I sat down and I really thought, what means something to me in a story? What am I trying to say? What are the themes that I am bringing to the world that resonate with me and hopefully with other people as well? And those ideas kind of started to gel a little better the more that I worked with them and thought about them. And a lot of themes do emerge kind of organically, and I think that's good. But I do think that it helped me to finish things when I sort of looked at all of my unfinished projects and started to sort out the ones that had a real core meaning to me versus the ones that I was just, kind of playing around with, kind of riffing off stories I liked or whatever, and there wasn't really anything in them deeper. And of course, along with that sense of having a deeper meaning, you still have to go through figuring out okay, if you get stuck, what about this scene isn't working? But on a larger level, I think it helps to really know why you're doing this and why finish a novel. Why does it matter to you or anybody else? You have to have a reason for completing it or sharing it, or it's probably not going to get completed and it might just be kind of something you like to goof off with, and that's fine. But if this is something that's going to sustain you, something that you're going to keep doing your whole life, there has to be a real drive for why you're doing it and what you're trying to say, I think. But on a completely different note, there's also kind of the opposite from sitting down and getting real deep about it, is that sometimes you just have to take all the pressure off yourself. As I described, the first novel I completed came about on a dare to write a trashy teen novel, and although I did not finish the original Alfred and Livonia book, it was the longest thing I had ever written at that point, and I wrote it very quickly, and it was because I took all the pressure off myself. I just wrote whatever was fun. Every scene was just pure fun. It was very indulgent. It had no real plot. It was just all the fun parts and none of the work. So I do think that it can really help if you just stop trying to write a real viable, serious kind of book and just completely have fun. I think that's one reason that a lot of people who later become published start out in fanfic, because in fanfic, I think people are more likely to just kind of goof off. And that can be very, very important to actually becoming a real writer, is sometimes you need to sit down and think about the deeper, heaviest themes. What is your soul trying to convey? And other times you need to throw all that out the window and just like, what is just like so totally super fun for me to write? So yeah, you gotta play with those two dueling elements. And in closing, I just want to emphasize that writing is not easy. It's not easy for anyone, even people who've written a lot of books, even professionals. It really is a skill, and the more writing that I've done, the more of a skill I realize it is. It truly is not easy to work out a plot and untangle plot problems and stick to it to complete a novel. It can feel very intimidating at first, but you will have to find your own process. There really is no magical, just this is how you do it, this is what's missing, this is how you get there. So ultimately you have to have that burning desire to complete the novel, and then you just have to find the time to work on it, and just know that I totally understand how hard it is, but I've been through it. I still sometimes can't believe that I've completed any novel at all, because I just remember how hard it seemed, and I still sometimes look at my half-finished novels and think it's going to be a miracle if I ever get this done. But I do. I just keep at it and I get them done, and with every novel it does get a little bit easier. I could probably talk about this for another hour. There is so much to discuss when it comes to how to get stuff done, but my voice is getting tired, so I'm going to cut it off there. I really hope that this was helpful and encouraging for some of you. If there's anything that I missed, let me know. Anything you're particularly struggling with, maybe I can do a follow-up video or a post on Patreon and Substack about it. Just let me know. Why are you not finishing your novel? And is there anything I can say to you to help? But I believe in you. You can do it. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. My name is Lydia Foxglove. On this channel, I talk about the creative life in general and the writing life in particular. If you'd like more from me, I do have that Patreon and Substack. They both have the same free content, as well as a subscription. Gets you access to 2 free videos every month voted on by you guys. You also get those with my YouTube memberships, and you get access to my Discord server where we have fun talking about writing and creative stuff every day. If you'd like to read any of my books that really help support the channel, I have my new release, Wanted Brooding Man Tragic Past, out this month. It is set in my Hidden Lands world and has some good spooky season vibes. I come out with a video every Sunday at 3 p.m. and sometimes also on Wednesdays at 8 or 9 p.m. Eastern, if you'd like to join me for my live chats, and I will see you next time. Bye!
Yeah.